All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. Nice to have a group of young, strapping men in the Zendo today. It's awesome. And a pretty much all-female Zoom contingent as well. So let's all start. I love when everybody, if you're off camera, if you want to turn your camera on, it's really nice to talk to live people. Hello, Angie, Kim, what's up, Princeton? Laura, Ann, hello, Dominique, Leslie's coming. And then if everybody wants to, on the count of 3, if you're at home, if you want to unmute, and if you're here in the Zendo, if everybody just wants to, let's sing something or shout something, some kind of exclamation or singing, so we can all kind of get our voices together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Hey!
All right.
Yes. One voice talking together. That's awesome. Oh man, it's a beautiful, beautiful June day. And I was inspired to talk today by an interaction I had recently. I was just surfing stuff as we do on the internet, and I came across this little video. This woman was talking about just a quick little thing around self-help and healing, and it was this black woman who was just like, I was just digging her vibe and digging what she was saying, and she was just talking about, being a strong black woman, and just had some really cool things to say. And so I sent it to another black woman I know, thinking that, she would dig it. I was like, isn't this dope? And she watched it, and she said, you know what, like, I'm not about this. I'm kind of tired of this strong black woman thing. And I was taken aback. I was like, oh, really? And she said, yeah, like, why can't I be weak? Like, yeah, the legacy of black women in this country, particularly falling where black women fall on the intersectionality chart, has definitely forced a lot of strength and resilience just to survive and move forward. But like, why can't I be a whole person? Why can't I be weak? Why can't I be sad? And that just like, it was such a huge moment for me. It almost like moved me to tears, because it was such a perfect expression of being my authentic self. And that, I feel like, is not only so important to racial healing, racialized karma healing, as Dr. Larry Ward would put it, but also just for life, just as a spiritual person. What we do here in Zen is all about embodying my true self, my authentic self, which includes everything and doesn't get caught up in archetypes like a strong this, or a masculine that, or a weak this, or a lazy that, or a smart this, or a whatever. It's totally fluid and open and includes everything. And that's because that's our true nature. Then anytime we get caught up in any kind of, I should be like this, I must be like that, people see me as this, and so I should continue to do this. I have to be able to fit within that paradigm that people see me at. That is going against our true nature, which is totally fluid, totally empty. So, man, I was just so moved by that statement. Why can't I be weak? Um, so I just wanted to kind of point to that. That's like kind of the entire talk right there. Whatever you are in this moment is your authentic self, and to truly open up to being what I am right now: angry, jealous, impatient, joyful, all the things. To completely lose this little self in whatever that is the beginning and end of any Dharma talk anyone could ever possibly give. Um, but we all paid for tickets to be here, so I'm going to say a little bit more. So it made me think of a couple koans, a little short series of koans that I thought they just kind of came up when I was thinking about this. So the first one is Case 14 in the Hekigan Roku, otherwise known as the Blue Cliff Record. It's one of the books in our curriculum of koans. And it's a very short, very simple koan, but it's very rich and large and very difficult to talk about. So, as always, I apologize if I make no sense, but I'm going to do my best. So the koan, or the short story, a koan is kind of like a short story or parable that we sit with, try to really embody the point of what it's getting at. Takes place in the 10th century, so we're talking over 1,000 years ago. And I always love to just point out that these little things that happen over 1,000 years ago, thousands of years ago, are still incredibly relevant today. I think that's part of the magic of this practice that we do. So a monk asks Uman, who's one of our more famous and masters in our lineage, ancestry. A monk asked Uman, what are the whole lifetime teachings? And Uman responded, an appropriate statement. So that's the entire koan. Very simple. So here's this monk, right? And a lot of these koans is when one monk comes to see a teacher, just like we have one-on-one student-teacher interactions here at Sweetwater. That practice has also been going on for thousands of years. And, you know, I like to iterate that relationship, creating that relationship, finding a teacher on your spiritual path, I think is of the utmost importance. That could be a Zen teacher here at Sweetwater. That could be a mentor you have in life. That could be a pastor you watch online. Any kind of place where you feel safe and have the trust to be your authentic self, to be wrong, to fight, to have conflict, and to have someone that really can support you in your spiritual practice, I think is just indispensable. So here's this monk, he comes to Uman, this great teacher, and he says, what are the whole lifetime teachings? That's a pretty big question, right? A lot of people come into Doksan and say, this guy doesn't like me, how do I deal with it? Which is also a very rich question, right? If that's what we're facing. But this is a loaded question, right? So some teachers talk about it like, what are the teachings of the lifetime of the Buddha, right? So the Buddha wandered around for 49 years teaching people, giving Dharma talks, meeting with people one-on-one, meditating with them. So what is the whole? How do you encapsulate those 49 years of our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, and what he taught? So that's one way to see it. What about our teachers in life, right? For me, it's Seisen. What are her lifetime of teachings? So from being a boomer kid in rural Montana to becoming a hippie and then finding Zen and now teaching Zen for over 20, 25 years. What are the teachings of her entire lifetime? And then, of course, most importantly, what are the teachings of my lifetime, right? All of this stuff, all of our spiritual practice, whether you're Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, secular, um, it's all about knowing it for yourself, right? Having that authentic experience for myself, being my authentic self. What is my entire life of becoming authentic? It's a heavy ass question. I am glad I am not Uman in this situation. How do you possibly respond to that? And he says simply an appropriate statement, right? He could have explained Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, Lotus Sutra, Diamond Sutra, all these different things we could talk about, all these different sutras and texts and explanations and relative and absolute and no self and all this stuff we can talk about. But his precision and his wisdom makes him just simply say an appropriate statement. And like I said, this is a really famous koan. And if you Google it, there's just a ton of talks. Everybody wants to talk about this koan. And so I read and listened to a bunch of Dharma talks to try to see like what is so powerful about this answer, an appropriate statement. It's so hard to talk about. But after listening, it really does take care of everything. It really does answer the question perfectly. How do I spend a lifetime of being authentic? What does it look like to spend an entire life manifesting Buddha nature, enlightenment? An appropriate statement. So, how the hell am I going to talk about this? Let's start by looking at each word. So, an implies one. There's only one answer to this question at any given moment, and that is this moment. Whatever it is, you're feeling strong, you're feeling weak, you're feeling like a loser, you're feeling like a winner, you're happy, you're sad, you're in pain, you're sick, you're hateful, whatever it is, and just one. Anything else is an idea. Anything that's not here in this moment, any analysis, any shoulda, coulda, woulda, that's extra. That's an extra thing that our mind wants to put on the purity of just this moment. Be here now, right? We've all heard that. So even just that first word, and, right? He doesn't say cultivating multiple appropriate responses. He doesn't say refining your responses. He just says, and. Every moment, just this one thing. So then the next word, appropriate. So what, appropriate to what? Appropriate to a circumstance? Well, we know that's just circumstance. That's just karma. That's just cause and effect. And if we're looking at the absolute truth, then there are no circumstances. There's no separation. So it can't just be appropriate to a certain set of circumstances. Circumstances are empty. We know that from our Zazen. We know that from all the various teachings since the Buddha. Appropriate to me? Well, I'm not any kind of fixed permanent thing. So this appropriate that he's saying is really, I think, similar to, saying, can't I be weak? Totally fluid, totally open. And from an absolute perspective, right? Absolute meaning, in Buddhism, when we talk about the absolute truth, That is total emptiness, total oneness, total vastness. No appropriateness, no inappropriateness. And so from that perspective, everything is appropriate. There's no such thing as inappropriate. And so just being in this moment, whatever it is, opening up to this moment is already appropriate. As hard as you can try, there's nothing you can do to be inappropriate. Whole, perfect, and complete, just as you are right now. Even if that's hateful, even if that's jealous, even if that's impatient, whatever it may be, angry, it includes everything. That is what it means to be one with everything, that every moment is absolutely appropriate. And so there's nothing to worry about. So an appropriate response, statement, an appropriate statement. So we mostly think of verbal things as statements, but I can't tell you how many times someone being silent and just listening makes a huge statement. Or maybe like a body gesture makes a statement, someone just nodding their head. And so I think that also really points to just total inclusion. Everything we do is a statement of appropriateness, right? And that's why we want to pay attention. That's why we practice and attend to every moment, because everything we do is a statement. Everything we do ripples out. The things we say, the things we don't say, the things we prepare, the things we don't prepare, the things we do with our bodies, the things we don't do, everything is creating karma. Everything is a statement that ripples out. So what are the whole lifetime teachings? Momentary thusness. Everything the Buddha taught. There's a lot of kind of famous trendy Buddhist sayings like, the Buddha never said a single word. The Buddha never taught anything. If you meet the Buddha on your path, kill it. So all these ways of saying that there's nothing to teach. Anything that we can grab onto as a teaching, or this is what it is, it's all just this empty, airy ideas that are extra on top of just this moment. So I think that's why this is such a perfect answer, because it really embodies the absolute and the relative, right? The absolute being that every moment, just this one moment, everything perfectly appropriate. Anything else is extra. And it encapsulates the relative reality, how the absolute manifests in the relative world, separate people, separate things. And all of those separate things are making statements, constantly making statements upon each other. There is not a single thing you do, there's not a single person you encounter that you do not change. One of the talks I listened to said that, and that just really resonated with me, that every single interaction I have changes that person's life. Whether I know it or not, whether it's in a big way or not, there's just no way around it. Because we're all one, because we're all connected, and because essentially, in the absolute sense, we are all making statements of our authentic self, we're constantly impacting each other. We're constantly making ripples. And so that's why we practice, and that's why we spend time meditating. That's why we see teachers. That's why we're vulnerable in our spiritual path, because we are constantly making statements. And for those of us who have an interest in living a spiritual life or living an intentional life, We care about the statements that we're making. That is our whole lifetime practice, is taking care of our statements. Understanding that essentially they're all appropriate, and at the same time, we work within the relative world to be appropriate, to be more appropriate than inappropriate in those relative circumstances we find ourselves in. Um, Another good way to look at this is from the three tenets. I know we talk about these a lot. I'm sorry if it's really repetitive, but they're just so powerful, right? So the three tenets of the Zen Peacemakers: not knowing, bearing witness, and loving action. So an appropriate statement, the most appropriate statement, comes from this place of not knowing, right? Approaching our entire life from this point of emptiness, not identifying with things, right? The fact that I was like, oh, like smart, vibey black woman talking about being a strong black woman. Oh, I bet my black woman friend would like that. Like, that's so transgressing, coming from a place of not knowing. And she like snapped me right out of that. So to be appropriate, the best way to be appropriate is to come from that place of not knowing. Totally letting go of all my ideas, approaching every moment fresh, like a blank canvas. So that's not knowing, bearing witness, right? From that place of emptiness, total openness, open heart, open mind, just bearing witness without judging, without analyzing. That, I think, is the key to appropriateness. Well, it all is, but that's a huge component of it. We're looking at these gun issues, and we all have our feelings, but man, one side comes with just, this is how it is, and this is what we need to do. No, this is how it is, and this is what we need to do. So many issues. And there's just no attempt to come at it from a place of not knowing. I think we should ban all guns, but what else is there? Let me just bear witness to what homeboy says, to what this person says, to what this evidence shows, right? If all of our lawmakers and all of our constituents came from that, like, this is what I think, but like maybe like let's see what else is out there. And just simply bear witness from an empty canvas place, I feel fairly confident that legislation would arise naturally. Very effective legislation, instead of these just sides digging into what they think, battling it out, who can get the most votes on my side. It's worked in the past. It worked to abolish slavery. It worked to get the civil rights movement passed. So, again, even not knowing and bearing witness, we have to not know and bear witness to, right? Maybe sometimes digging into one side or the other is the best way. Any of these ideas that we want to hold on to is already inappropriate. Complete freedom to see whatever is possible. And then, of course, out of this not knowing and bearing witness from a blank slate perspective comes naturally loving action. The answer, the response, the statement, the legislation, it just naturally comes up. You don't have to force anything. So that's a quick look at this appropriate statement. But again, these are all just concepts and words, ways of thinking about it. The point of this koan is for you to realize your lifetime teachings, to embody fully and be intentional about your appropriate statement at any given moment. And if you were working on this koan, right, just imagine whether you're in Doksan or interview with somebody, or even if you're just driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. How do you answer this monk's question? How do you give an appropriate statement? That's what this koan is saying. In every moment, how am I being appropriate? So then, just really quickly, I wanted to mention the following koan, case 15 in the Blue Cliff record. A monk comes to Uman again and asks, if not for the present potential, and if not for the present phenomena, what is it? And Uman says, an upside down statement. So these koan collections often do that, right? Kind of put one after the other connected to kind of throw you off. That's what all these are about, is to let go of what we think we know. So again, a monk comes, if not for the present potential, which in fancy language refers to subjective experience, the mind, and if not for present phenomena, which refers to objects, objective truth. So if not for, outside of me, outside of externals, outside of subjective and objective, once we let go of all of the separations and we embody this oneness and emptiness of all things, what is it? Then what? How do you express that? So pretty much the same question. It's kind of a fancier, more philosophical way of putting it, but it's still saying, what is this lifetime of Buddha-ness? How do I live a whole life as an enlightened person? Outside of subjective, objective, all the concepts, all the everything. Help me, teacher, tell me, like, what is it? What is my life, if not that? And he says an upside down statement. So upside down meaning inappropriate, out of whack with reality, confused, inverted, lost. So the actual commentary in the ancient text, the ancient masters, one of them says that he's now commenting on the monk's question, that even to ask that question is upside down, to try to elicit a response, to elicit some kind of idea that goes beyond subject and object already is upside down thinking. Don't look for an answer to any of this. Don't look for a ground to stand on. Don't look for any kind of thing to hold on to. Everything impermanent. That's like the first thing the Buddha said. But I think, and that's fine, that maybe he's making a comment on the monk. But I think even more direct, he's saying that all of our upside downness, right? Just the basic idea that I'm a person in the world. I wake up and I feed myself because I'm hungry. That's already transgressing the absolute truth of oneness. Because I am a separate being that has to eat. Like already just to live, we are mired in greed, anger, ignorance. That's why the Buddha said life is suffering. There's just no way out of it. And that's why, and because that relative reality of upside downness, impermanence, loss, grief, all the suffering that we deal with, because that is how the absolute reality manifests, they are one. They are one. So even all your upside downness is it. Don't try to get away from it. There's no place or thing you're going to realize when everything's perfect, when everything makes sense, when you finally get it. It's just not going to happen. Just be upside down. Even the last thing I just told you about appropriateness and everything be appropriate, that's upside down. Let go of that. Right? And so that to me is exactly the feeling that I got when this person said, why can't I be weak? It was the same gut feeling that I got when I look at these two koans. So if you think you're a strong person, be weak. If you think you're a weak person, maybe you're strong. If you think you're a good, loving, open-hearted, kind person, be open to being a dick. Excuse my language. But because of the essential, absolute emptiness of everything, we must allow ourselves and everyone to be their full, authentic self, because everything is appropriate.